Welcome to It's What Our Characters Would Do, the podcast where a neutral good ranger, that's me, and a chaotic neutral warlock,
that's me,
talk about RPGs, roll funny dice, and give away some sweet loot. I'm Bob World Builder.
And I'm Grace World Destroyer.
And today we're talking about in-group conflicts, and we're giving away a mystery set of dice from only Chris. I think I'm just going to call it that now because it's funnier.
This set of dice is not for rolling, though. This set of dice you are to throw at players
someone named Chris
who you are conflicting with.
Bonus points if they have to be named Chris. But first, Grace, how you feeling today?
Oh, I'm these days mostly excited about all the video games that are coming out in the next 3 months or so.
Yeah, you were just rattling off a list yesterday.
Shadow of the Erdtree, Dragon's Dogma 2, the new World of Mana game that I forget the name of, and then I was telling you that I had a dream about Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah, that's how it started. That you were playing Hogwarts Legacy.
But I've never actually played Hogwarts Legacy. But then I started talking about
and
the
other... And you're not even a big Harry Potter fan.
No, not really.
Have you ever had any other Harry Potter-related dreams?
Nope. It just looks like a cool game. But I was just like, I do want to play that game, but all this other stuff is coming out that I want to play more.
Oh, I'm just too much of a gamer.
Yeah, I know.
Gamer problems.
Gamer problems.
This is why I keep saying, although I haven't said it in a while, that if you just started a Twitch channel or however Twitch works or something, you could just play these games all the time.
I already
do your job.
Oh, well, yeah.
You wouldn't have to do something else for 8 hours a day or whatever.
Well, one of us has to earn the health insurance.
That is true. We live in the United States. Yeah, and I feel like I'm okay. I'm struggling a little bit right now with some annoying businessy side of this. Actually, that's a good, good thing to mention.
I would have to do business.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Yeah, just finally opened a business bank account for what I do, and it immediately got locked up, but didn't really actually say it was locked up. It was just my login info, which worked earlier in the day, stopped working, and then continued to not work for a couple days. And then I tried to get in touch with a customer service person, and they actually verified that everything I was doing was correct, but the internet system, whatever, just still wouldn't let me in. So they're mailing me a thing, and it's kind of a whole thing. But besides that, everything else is actually fine.
Except our Wi-Fi isn't working very well right now.
That's true.
And we don't know why.
Yeah, but I feel like that's probably just going to fix itself like it always does.
Yeah. The little ghost that lives inside the 5e maker will fix it for us.
Yeah, he's probably just under the weather or something. Well, with that, why don't we just immediately hard cut to this episode's actual topic. And our first segment, The Quick Build, where we summarize the topic/goal of this episode in exactly 3d6 words.
Oh, you roll, because I'm gonna define.
12.
12 words. Okay. When the people in your group are being jerks, you...
I got 2 words left.
I know. Kick them out.
I think that was 13.
Well, I erase you and change you to kick.
And okay.
Kick them out.
When they're being jerks, kick them out.
When the people at your table are being jerks, kick them out.
Yeah, so I guess
it's okay to do that.
And that is so true. And I guess for the rest of this episode, then, for our section and then for after our break, we're going to get some questions and answers from people. We will find the line for when to kick people out. So, yeah, why don't you start us off by introducing what inspired this topic?
So we have a friend who plays with us in our weekly game, our home game.
And they're terrible. No.
It's not about her being a problem. So she ran her first game a week ago or something. And she was really excited and also really nervous about it. And the people that she played with did not treat her very well. They were not fair or respectful to her. And as she told me this story, I was like, just don't, you know? And she like shared with me some passive-aggressive remarks that she was receiving from a player because he wanted to have a specific magical item, a summoning magical item, a Horn of Valhalla that would allow him to summon like a bunch of berserkers. And as a lot of us know, summoning is like the best way to slow down your combat and make it boring.
Yeah. And it just makes that one person usually have an incredibly long turn, depending on how you divvy up these creatures or whatever. And especially, I don't know if we mentioned it yet, this first session she was running wasn't exactly like the beginning of a campaign. It was this one shot that she wrote herself. So to come in with like trying to interject an item that's going to potentially radically extend the time of turns in fights is the easiest way to make a one shot not fit its one session goal.
Exactly. And she already put like a lot of content. She put so much work and thought into her one shot. It did have a lot of content, and she had to like cut a bunch of stuff out because of player behaviors that not just this one guy, but some of the other players at the table that didn't play mindfully. But this one guy in particular was just... She asked him nicely if he would consider a different item, listing the reasons why, because it's going to slow down combat, it's going to unbalance things, etc. And he goes, like, this is why I don't play D&D. And it's just like, okay, then don't play. Like, if it were me, I would have kicked him out then. That wasn't really an option in this case because he had volunteered to host the session. So... kind of just had to grin and bear it. But it just made me angry, and it made me angry enough to want to do a whole podcast topic about it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say there's like a little bit more to it, but like without getting into details, I feel like that's the important information. Is like they were given the opportunity to choose 2 magic items and were given a specific whatever the power level is called for items. Can't think of the
it was
rarity,
like uncommon
right?
through rare.
Yeah,
she was gonna let them have because it was like a higher level one shot.
Yeah, and so the item was totally like within the bounds of what the DM described. But then upon seeing that this choice, you know, how it could affect the rest of the game, wanted them to change it, and just like bringing that up, brought on
a tantrum. He threw a tantrum.
Essentially, yeah. I guess you could say that. Of passive aggressively then trying to get the GM to like back down because you know it's like
feel guilty for imposing boundaries.
Yeah,
which is not what you want in a player,
right?
And it's happened to me before. Like we had a player who, actually twice before, but one of the more recent ones was someone who wanted to do like or find a cleric to cast a resurrection spell for them. And in my homebrew setting, that's not really a thing. And so it kind of rolled into this thing where it's like this character was religious and was like, well, then my character wouldn't want to do resurrection, but I built this character so that they could revive people. But the person hadn't shared that information with me as the DM beforehand. Yeah. And the person wrote like a very long Discord message about how I was like ruining their fun. And I was like, okay, if that's going to ruin, this is like a hard rule in the world.
Yeah.
If that's going to ruin your fun, then this isn't the game for you. Goodbye.
Yeah. And so I feel like, we've kind of had these few experiences that we've had like that. It's been, I feel like we've been fortunate in that the people for the most part were, like our own experience I'm saying, were like mostly respectful about it or gave themselves the out. As in, like you said, with this time around, which again, not in our group, the player literally said like, this is why I don't play D&D. And it's like, that is like themselves admitting that they're not going to work with this situation. And like we had that one other time where what the player said, like they kind of drew the line themselves
They said
already being over it.
Yeah, it was like
already being past
it was a
the line.
character issue,
Yeah.
and it was becoming a situation where the character was at odds with the party, and it was looking like they might have to part ways. For like a time, I could probably have found a way to bring them all back together, but the person said, if I can't play this character, then I'm not interested in playing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay.
Yeah. And that's the crazy part, is I feel like when you actually then act on that and like just and don't like bend to whatever they're trying to say, it's like it's just an easy way to cut it off that is or at least in our cases, I think, surprising to the players, because they're like, oh wait, crap, I didn't actually want to leave the campaign, but
wait, I forgot that there's like 50 players to every DM in this hobby. I'm replaceable? Inconceivable.
Yeah. I mean, and so that's an interesting thing about it too. I think the two games that you're describing were online games where, yeah, it's like if you're just playing online, like you can always find a new player in one way or another. And yeah, it'll stink if like you played with that person for a long time or something like that. But at the end of the day, the point is to have fun. And if people's fun really aren't matching up, or somebody even just does one thing that kind of taints the fun, it's not worth trying to make it work.
Yeah, but it is much trickier when it comes to close-knit groups of real-life friends.
Right, and so that's kind of the situation for this person who's in our group who just tried to host this one shot, where like they are IRL friends.
They've all been friends since high school, most of them. And
they usually play together, I think. Maybe not all of those people.
They don't play that often because at least one of them lives like pretty far away right now. But if they're going to play, they're like, that's the group.
Yeah.
But yeah, just all been friends for a really long time. One of them, the one that threw the tantrum, usually hosts events. So to kick him out would be to kind of fragment the entire situation.
Yeah. I don't want to say there's not an easy answer, because I still think the answer is like, don't play with people who are going to treat you poorly.
We would have played her game.
And then, low-key, I was just thinking, it's like, wait a minute, she could have run the one shot for our group, and it probably would have been really fun. I mean, and I still think
she should.
Yeah, I'd totally be
like, I want to play it.
I
think you just have to know that if your friendship with a person who's giving you trouble at the table isn't strong enough to withstand them accepting feedback or criticism on their behavior at the table, maybe you shouldn't be real life friends with that person in the first place.
Well, and that could be the case depending on how, severe it is. But I feel like it's more often the case that it's just don't play RPGs with that friend.
Yeah.
Because it's like if they're friends in other ways, by all means be friends.
But I feel like usually if someone can't accept any like criticism on the way, I don't know, criticism isn't really the word that I'm looking for, but someone who can't accept any responsibility for the way that their behavior affects others at the table is usually like that away from the table too.
Yeah.
And I know that this person definitely is. So it's like, I don't know, just always take into account how a person behaves in real life before you invite them to your table.
Right. So I guess
if you're very close with somebody, you already know what they're like. You can probably get a decent idea of how they're going to act during the game. And if you're not okay with that, then don't play with them at all, and you'll probably save yourself a little trouble.
Yeah. So I think we're saying for online games where you may or may not know those people ahead of time, don't worry too much about hanging on to people, because you can totally find new players. Like if somebody's being a jerk, that's the easy way to kick them out. In real in-person games, especially if you're playing with your friends, essentially, or trying to set up a game with your friends, but you know that one of these friends, for one reason or another, has a personality trait that isn't going to work at the table, either don't play with them, or even consider maybe in extreme cases, if I can't even play a game with my friend, then maybe consider the other aspects of the friendship. But I think that goes a little bit beyond the scope of this episode about
this is about gaming,
about RPG stuff.
But also, listeners, think about the people that are in your life. It is okay to not be friends with people sometimes, like if someone is harmful to you and your mindset,
true,
then you know.
We want the best for you.
Yeah, we do. Well, he does. I only want to destroy.
Perfect. All right. That sounds like a good time to take a little break, and then we'll come back and hear about some of your in-group conflicts. And now it's time for a random encounter where we roll to read your stories and questions, generally about this topic, and the person who wrote our favorite story/question takes home some sweet loot. Roll that dice.
8.
From Obscura XX. I wish my players had inter-party conflict. A few of my players haven't gotten in deep with role-playing their characters' beliefs, which is okay. And I believe it's led them to not feeling strong enough about their characters' wants, so they often back down when challenged by other PCs, or resort to murder hobo tendencies if it's an NPC. I like the drama they currently have going on, but I feel like a few players are a little afraid to get their feet wet, to fully immerse themselves, and commit to the bit.
Honestly, I can relate right now. In Waterdeep Dragon Heist, Waldergeep Descent into the Dragon's Heist.
Right.
I envisioned the game with like a bunch of bloodthirsty thieves and mercenaries, but you guys all kind of took a more
it's
of a
level 2. I think we're gonna get there.
Like a kind of a middling approach. You guys did do a significant amount of violence at Growlhund Manor, murdering
bunch of witnesses,
two tied up nobles. But you won't cut off a drow's hand.
I said I would do it.
Oh, I thought you said you didn't want to do it.
No, you were in the bathroom. Jerry said he didn't want to. And I was like, I'll cut off somebody's hand.
Yeah. That is what I want to happen. That is, I introduced a drow character that could fit.
Well, I'm not going to cut off that guy's hand.
You're not going to cut off his hand?
No, he plays a musician.
I want you to cut off his hand.
I don't want to do that. I mean, he's the first one we know, so that's like plan C, let's say, for drow hands to cut off. First thought, reading this comment, I was like, wish my players had party conflict? Clearly, based on the rest of this, you wish the player characters had inter-party conflict.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want your players to have inter-party conflict. And, he ended it saying, wish they would commit to the bit. Absolutely. When it's just the bit, when it's the role play and it's in-game, that's all good. And that's cool to have little conflicts like that, as long as, your characters, or I should say your players, can separate character from player.
It kind of sounds like they're afraid because they don't know where the line is with their fellow players. You might want to just have them talk about it.
Well, that's always the answer. Bring it up to the group. Tell them you're interested in this.
How far am I, the player, comfortable with having my character pushed?
Yeah.
Am I okay with violence between myself and another party member? Yeah. Will I take offense to that as a player?
All this stuff is definitely sensitive subject. So I think just addressing it, and you, if you're the GM here, it sounds like, could just say hey, I'm interested in having a little more tension in our role play. And then you just got to talk with everybody to figure out what's the right amount of tension for them and not too much. And I agree, though. I was going to say for a Waldergeep game, we really haven't been doing a lot of role play among characters, but I also feel like we've been kind of rushing to chase after this item we've been after. So I'm hoping that once we get to hell, things will communicating with each other more, learning more about what we will and won't do, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. I am just trying to squish most of the
Waterdeep
content
I value that.
into
I do want to breeze through it too. So.
Well, I guess I dropped the dice, so podcast over.
I don't think that's ever happened. That's so weird.
7.
From Simeon Snow. I've had a few campaigns where I'm pretty sure we had a session 0, but there would be one player who would keep talking about how the world should function differently. But it felt more like they just wanted different content or different results. An example from years ago. The party showed up in town having found out about a necromantic cult, and this PC went to report it to the local mayor, expecting them to deal with it instead of the party. They said it didn't feel realistic when the mayor didn't get right to it. Since the cult was the next big arc to deal with, I wasn't going to just let NPCs deal with the main quest off screen. The mayor did take them seriously and provide help, though. Not quite sure how to have that discussion with the player since it's just guesswork about how they were feeling, and I didn't want to call them out. And they weren't disruptive to play, it was just always small comments here and there while being a little peeved. So we managed it well enough, but I felt ill-equipped to deal with a player who was having these series of occasional issues but wasn't being disruptive. Over time, those kind of tensions can sap the energy out of a campaign. I've had a few similar experiences as a player with PCs making small jabs at each other over past disagreements repeatedly over time. Do you have any advice for low simmer conflict that stretches out over time? While the bigger conflict moments can be scary, they can also be easier to deal with. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what we described earlier. Yeah, because the conflict is obvious and can be spoken about in the moment and de-escalate it. Low simmer conflict has a lot more mind games involved, and it can be taxing to manage as a GM amongst everything else. Somehow, I feel like your experience as a camp counselor might be helpful.
Social emotional learning.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to start on that? I just talked a lot.
I kind of feel like it's just another matter of separation of character and player and communication. Like, are these two low simmering conflict players okay with this level of tension, or does it seem like one is like jabbing at the other and the other's not really into it?
Yeah. Passive aggressive stuff could be a sort of low simmer thing that usually, like, I'm a non-confrontational person. Usually if someone says something passive aggressive to me, I'm just like, okay. But then we'll just like move on and hopefully it doesn't happen again. But yeah, somewhere you do have to address it. And that's just kind of it. You know, we talked about these bigger things kind of coming out in the open because that's just the nature of a bigger conflict. But a low simmer conflict just needs to be brought into the open by someone pointing out, like,
if it's between two players, but if it's between two characters, then it's just part of the game. Like they are role playing together.
Yeah. So it's making sure it is role play and not something else.
Exactly.
I think is
That's
what this
I'm
person's
saying.
talking about. Yeah.
5. Maybe we should start using those cards for this.
Oh, that's a great point. All right.
But then we need the dice rolling sound still.
Okay. From Guru Gru. My first campaign I ran as a DM ended with inter-party conflict in a good way. The party ranged in morality, but one member, the Githyanki Apparent Mind Sorcerer, was clearly super evil while the rest were generally good or evil. He would always opt for torture, intimidation, or humiliation, especially diaper-related? I don't know what that means. It was never clear why the other characters stuck around him, especially since they weren't as evil. He even once almost killed another party member with a psionic blast in combat. By the end of the campaign, I decided to end the campaign with a blast. I asked whose characters would actually stick around with him after making sure it was all in good fun, and when half admitted they didn't have a reason to, a powerful NPC wizard recruited them against him. He also committed a psionic blast massacre against the nearby town. The campaign ended with the party splitting into Team Githyanki and Team NPC Wizard. There wasn't actually any PvP, but making it clear that their characters didn't have to always agree and stick together was cathartic and helped the roleplay, I think. In my future campaigns as a DM, I want to dive into character conflict and drama more, without PvP, at least most of the time, of course. So often, characters of widely different moralities and beliefs stick together for no in-game reason, and it can really limit roleplay and believability. That drama is the juicy good stuff after all, but that's my story of inter-party conflict.
It worked because it came at the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
If it had been like one person, and they handled it very well because it looks like it was a party, like an even party split.
Right.
Like somewhat even.
And it sounded like they actually addressed it at multiple points.
Yeah. In a lot of situations where there's like one super evil character and the rest aren't that evil, it's just like the super evil one winds up getting kind of chased out.
Yeah. And actually this like offhand comment about diaper-related humiliation tells me that this is probably a pretty goofy game. And like these players are just like...
That kind of sounds like fetish content to me, but...
Kink shaming? I still feel like it could be a goofy game.
Kind of seems like a kink.
So what I'm getting at, though, is these people are obviously just like goofing around. And like...
Yeah.
So like inter-party conflict here isn't going to be as high stakes as a group who is like more dramatic all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It worked really well. Good tale.
2.
Really short one. The sharing of magical items is a source of most conflicts in my experience. I know you have a decent story about this one. What would be a non-meta in-world way to resolve these conflicts?
I usually make it very clear that items are intended for a specific character. And most of the time, my party is like, oh yeah, that'll be perfect for this person. They should have it. And I haven't, as a DM, I haven't had that like any conflict over magic items.
I don't think I have either.
Magic items can be shared. Like
too?
Someone could have it for one battle and then realize it's better for the strategy for a different person to have it in a different battle. Like no one player character has to keep a magic item the entire game. It can be moved around.
Yeah. And I agree with this. I think for the most part in our games, we don't really have a lot of random magic items. Like they generally have a purpose and like you're saying are kind of meant for somebody.
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it in world is that magic items are a little more rare, and when they're put in the world, in the character's path and they come across it, it's going to be clearly meant for somebody, or like they were even going after it specifically, It's not like, oh, hey, we found this +3 sword of no particular description and therefore it could go to like a bunch of people. Like, yeah, that's just going to invite some conflict. And it, again, still depends on your players because like, okay, yeah, if you have 3 fighters in that party, they're going to fight over very similar items because they're playing very similar mechanical characters. But it depends on how diverse they are and how just willing the players are to share stuff in general.
Yeah. We do have like 3 sword wielders in Walderkeep because Gwyn, the swords bard, would use one. Yeah,
but I think we still have very different swords.
Yeah, so
even then, it's
short swords, rapiers, and great swords. Right, so I wouldn't just do long sword. I would choose short sword, rapier, great sword.
Exactly.
And then you would know. You would know whose item that is supposed to be.
From I apologize for the length. Actually, I feel like this isn't even as long as number 7 or whatever. In a Pathfinder Eberron campaign I'm currently running, some time ago, my players were tasked with retrieving stolen artifacts from a museum. The artifacts belonged to a long-lost goblinoid empire that locked its remaining people in underground vaults, whose people were now just being released. As part of their search for the missing artifacts, they ran into a battle between 2 goblinoids, a hobgoblin and a goblin couple, and a group of aberrations. Once the battle was over, they noticed the goblin couple carried the artifacts they were looking for. However, after a short argument, it wasn't clear that they wouldn't give them up without a fight, so the party decided to create fake artifacts based on the originals.
Wait, it was clear that they wouldn't give them up without a fight?
It was clear that they wouldn't give them up without a fight, so the party decided to create fake artifacts based on the originals. The goblin couple then noticed that one of the party members, a changeling bard, carried a silver trumpet. The trumpet was a magic item that the party had acquired during a previous adventure, but the goblin couple noticed that it was actually an artifact from the long-lost goblin empire demanded its return to them. The bard attempted to deceive them, failed, and then convinced the couple that they would return the trumpet at a later date. As the players left the scene, the bard continued to resolve that they would never return the trumpet, and what followed was a long and intense argument between the party's bard, summoner, and gunslinger. The bard and summoner argued that the old empire had already fallen, and thus the goblin couple had no right to the trumpet, while the gunslinger insisted that their history ought to be preserved and returned to them.
Yeah, that belongs in a museum.
Or does it? Because they were taking the stuff out of the museum. Eventually, the bard conceded on the grounds that returning it would cause less future problems for the party. The argument contained some of the best role-playing I've ever heard from this group, and it made me fall in love with inter-party conflicts, like it for groups that are mature enough for it. Bleh. Okay, so pretty much just another story without asking anything of us.
Yeah. Cool story.
Yeah, it's a good story.
4.
From Harry Breeks. So this happened in second session of my group's new campaign. They went to a tavern where all the staff were apes. Ape emoji. Not after entering, one of the players, not soon after entering, one of the players who is new to D&D decided to attack the apes because he was dissatisfied with the service at the bar.
As you do.
The apes proceeded to 6v1 him and knock him unconscious. The rest of the party chose not to fight the apes because they thought the service was fun. This left the new guy unconscious and out of game for about 30 minutes IRL before they were able to heal and wake up his character. I feel like the party should have either calmed him down or joined the fight. I don't think there are any bad feelings between the players, and I think they all had fun, but I feel bad for putting the new guy on the bench for half an hour unable to play. What would you have done differently?
I would have done exactly what you did. Sometimes it's best to let a new player learn by doing.
Well, I think the knocking him out part was good, but yeah, I feel like depending on how long it was in-game, he should have either gotten up after an hour of it being a short rest or like...
To me, this kind of read like the other players were then like talking about something for probably only a couple seconds because 30 minutes IRL a lot of times is not that long in game, as long as they weren't just like taking a rest. But yeah, I mean 30 minutes, it's not that long because it probably took him longer to fight the apes, if you think about it. Because
not if they just 6v1'd him and it was in the second session of a new campaign. I think they would have just knocked him out pretty easily.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it depends on I guess how much time passed in game there. But yeah, 30 minutes IRL sounds like a long time to just sit there. What is if the other characters were all doing the adventure and he was just unconscious?
If they just left him in the bar while they did the rest of the adventure, then no. But it doesn't sound like that's what happened.
Yeah, again, unclear. But otherwise, usually you want people back in the game as quick as possible because he should have learned his lesson, but just by being knocked out. I don't think he needed a timeout, is what I'm saying. 1, 3, 9,
I just
10.
rolled 3.
Okay. From Kevin Broussard. This requires some context. This happened in a modern setting. Me and the other player here were in our early 20s, have known each other since kindergarten, been close friends since we were in high school, and still playing RPGs now in our 30s. We are also in theater together in high school. That's mostly to show how comfortable we were with each other. This could have been a very bad thing, but it was really fun for us. Now the actual story begins. Our characters were arguing about going to the police with our problems, and my friend said, I pull out my knives and then put his hands to my throat. In the real world, no real knives? Instantly, and without thinking about it, I then put my hand under his chin as though I were holding a gun and asked, do you think you can do it before I pull the trigger? We stayed that way for a few seconds, then backed off, and the situation was resolved somehow. As far as I can remember, this was the only physical manifestation of roleplay that I've ever been a part of, and it was a ton of fun.
Physical manifestation of roleplay. Yeah, that does sound fun.
Yeah.
That's a cool scene.
If I'm getting this right, it was kind of like and I don't know if there's a better term for this, but like a little Mexican standoff.
Yeah.
Is that what happened here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But they just actually like were holding their hands at each other.
It's like
I think that's fine.
There's that scene in The Office where they're playing like a murder mystery game and it ends with like 3 people like pointing finger guns at each other.
Yeah.
No, that sounds cool. And then like that act of your character standing up to this other character like resolve the conflict in itself.
And
just,
I think and I agree that all of that context was actually good because if you're just like at your game store for Adventures League and then you like put your hand on somebody's neck, that would be kind of weird. But since you know each other and are like friends, I think that's fine.
In your reading of it, I thought they like wrapped their hand around the person's neck until you said the thing about the knife.
Right.
And I've been like, that I probably wouldn't have been okay with that no matter how close friends I was with that person. But sounds like that worked out well.
Another cool tale. Mm-hmm. We do have a couple more, but a lot of these were very long entries. Maybe we could do a second episode reading more stuff like this if people would be interested in that. Let us know in the comments. But this time around, for sharing our favorite story/question, the episode's loot winner is... I forgot the name. Kevin Broussard for the crazy physical manifestation
of roleplay.
You're going home with a mystery set of dice from Only Crits. Woo! I mean Chris. Woo!
I guess throw it at that guy who pretended to hold a knife to your throat.
Yep. And if you enjoyed this week's episode, please 1-inch punch that like button. Please subscribe and consider supporting the station directly by joining as a YouTube channel member or as a patron. Our members and patrons get early access to every episode, and patrons get other cool rewards, including a private RSS link to listen to your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for your support, and keep building.
Stop building.